All right, here we go. Halloween episode of
Halloween time, Lethal Comics.
Lethal Comics. Happy Halloween. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about my favorite thing, the reason I got into comic books. We're going to be doing a whole episode on monster comics. Anything to do with monsters, horror, you name it, we're going to be doing it. So, are you ready for this, Carl? Because this is my game. This is my bag right here.
I'm ready.
All right.
And as I said before, I was not a monster comic guy growing up, but I know that you were. So I have a few things, but I'm kind of deferring to you here to school me on monster comics.
That's right. So my entire life have been quite obsessed. So in our first episode, we talk about me going to that secondhand bookstore in Kitchener-Waterloo, and in that wall of dirty old smoke-ridden comics, there was a mountain of superhero stuff there, but for some reason at an early age I was obsessed with horror, monsters. Specifically, I was obsessed with Universal horror, so the Wolfman, Frankenstein, Dracula, because back in the day, how old were you? I was born in '78. So I grew up in the 80s, and I don't know if you remember a TV station called the New VR. Yeah,
vaguely.
There was like a New VR station that on Sundays just ran Universal horror movies back to back to back to back to back on Sundays. And on Sundays, I would go to my uncle's house with my cousins, and my parents would be playing cards. They were really big into cards and stuff, and we'd swim in the swimming pool, and then I would spend the afternoon watching horror movies with my cousins. And if it was on Saturday, we would also watch it, and we watch movies like Jaws or The Exorcist. And I was like 4, 5, and 6, and everything I was involved with was horror. Now, what got me really into horror was the local library system in Ontario used to have these books. They're by a company called Crestwood House. Where's the Frankenstein one? There is a Frankenstein one here somewhere. Can you grab it? It's on the table. Sorry.
Yeah.
So they would have these books, these Crest House books, and they had every Universal horror you can imagine. Here's the Frankenstein one.
So these are yours from when you were a kid?
No, none of these are from when I was a kid because I only got them from the library and then had to return them. Becky Clunan ended up getting me a bunch of these, and I think my wife got me some. But you have to order away from them. They're expensive as hell now. But these were the books I used to take out as a kid. And I don't know where the werewolf one is. The Wolfman one is here somewhere, which is my coveted one. But see, they still have the library things in them.
Oh, yeah.
But if you open it up, they're just photo depictions of the Universal horror movies with portions of the scripts with them. And I became completely...
So it's kind of like a one of those book and record picture books.
Absolutely. So they made those as well. So I became very obsessed with them. They had Frankenstein, Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Godzilla, The Blob, Dracula, King Kong, and I would take them out every week. So they would never be at the library. They were always at my house. We'd return them, and I'd immediately take them back out. I was obsessed with these books. But when my parents split up and I was going to the comic book store, this is when this turned into monster comics. Specifically, right here in front of you are my first comics that I had when I was 5 and 6.
Off the rack. These are the ones.
These are off the rack from that store I'm telling you about. Weird War Tales and Creature Commandos were the first comics I ever bought. You're looking at them. These are the original ones from what year is that? 84.
Probably says in here.
Yeah.
Check the indicia here.
They're so old and they've been so
82.
used. Yeah, so 82. So I think a lot of these are from 82. What's this one here? I don't see it. 81. This is from 81. These are all monster comics. This one I lost the thing. So and the premise is I heard James Gunn is doing a animated thing on this. I don't know if it's going to hold as much weight as these ones. So the idea is the U.S. government has basically collected the Universal horror monsters to fight that asshole right there, Hitler.
The whole premise of Creature Commandos is Monsters Against Hitler?
Monsters Against Hitler.
Oh, wow.
That's the whole premise. And it is quite something. So they basically just fight Hitler. And
so this is issue, there are 118 issues of Creature Commandos?
Yes, I believe so.
Or more?
Yeah. What issue is this one? 114. Yeah, there was tons of them.
But
But also they were part of this guy. So this guy was always kind of on their team. He's GI Robot.
Wait, I'm still fascinated by
Yeah.
there's over 100 issues of Creature Commandos, and they're all about fighting Hitler?
Yeah, it's all about fighting Nazis and Hitler. Yeah.
Wow.
Now, when I was growing up, a little bit about me, my grandfather, Robert, who my middle name is named after, flew for the RAF in World War II. He flew Lancasters in the RAF. They had Lancasters and Wellington bombers. My grandfather flew both of them. And he blew out his eardrums one night because they were flying over in a mission into Holland, I believe, and he got coned. And if you know what being coned is, it's when the Nazis have like a giant spotlight and they put the light on your plane, right? And there's machine guns attached. And my grandfather said, if they got you in that cone, if they lit up your plane, there was almost like a 95% chance you were dead. Like once they got you, you're done. They got you. So the only way out of that coning is by dive bombing the plane. So he bombed the plane and blew out one of his eardrums.
Oh, wow.
And after that, he was basically running around the war, flying generals on
secret missions.
He
didn't get sent home?
No, he didn't get. No, my grandfather. No. My grandfather would pretend like he could hear. Like he was there till the end. But near the end, he was basically just flying generals around on a secret mission. But he was part of a group of pilots that basically blew up a lot of Holland.
Wow.
Yeah, I was talking to my mother the other day. So he was very like anti-Nazi. Like if you were hanging around my house, my grandfather just talked about like Nazis and Nazis killing off like a lot of his friends, right? Because he was part of 22 planes and only 2 planes made it through the war. The rest were killed by Nazis. So my grandfather definitely hated Nazis. So whenever I was reading these books, my grandfather got a fucking kick out of it. Because it was like a bunch of monsters fighting Hitler and stuff.
Well, so that explains that explains your interest in like these wars. See, because if I saw a comic called Weird War,
Weird War Tales.
I would just avoid it. Like I didn't care about war comics or like Howling Commandos. I didn't care about any of that stuff because I wasn't interested in like military battle kind of stuff.
I was always like really into military just because my grandfather would talk about it, and there was like. His uniform was around, and there was medals like at my house and different stuff like that. So I got really into like any sort of like war stuff. I was always like really, into war movies and action movies and all the rest of it. So a big part of, my upbringing was that, and the combination of monster comics and war stuff I found like very, very intriguing.
Perfect storm.
Perfect storm.
See,
So I really enjoy that.
When I was a kid, I remember like there was a sect of kids my age, boys my age, who loved monster stuff, bought Fangoria, loved gore, loved horror, and I was not that guy, and I never really understood it. You were that guy.
I was that guy.
Yeah.
I was 100% that guy.
I never as a kid watched a lot of like gross horror stuff. I did that later and came to enjoy it. I like creepy supernatural horror, but I didn't get the whole Fangoria thing, but
so it's a bummer. All my Fangoria magazines are at my house. So there's certain stuff that I keep at my house, and I meant to bring it today and totally forgot. But my Fangoria collection's at my house. So I was a big Fangoria collector. This is another magazine that was very instrumental in my childhood. Famous Monsters. Now, Famous Monsters was an amazing book that all talked about horror movies all the time. It would have sections on what I thought was going to be one of my careers besides comics. Was I always wanted to be one of the guys like Rick Baker, who would make
makeup artists.
Monsters. Yeah. So that's part of the reason why I'm so into Steve Kostansky and Cycle Gorman, is because, which will come up later, because he's one of those guys that has a creature effects warehouse and he makes monster masks and monsters and all the rest of that stuff. And like the book I showed you before of the Universal Horror, those magazines basically were just pictures of different bits of horror movies. And look at that. Scanners. The scene where the guy's head blows up in Scanners. This is what, I was super into as a kid. And a lot of the covers.
Great cover. Yeah.
Basil Gogos. Yeah. I don't know I think this looks like a Basil Gogos. It looks like it. But Basil Gogos was a big monster, like famous monsters guy. And he's a painter. And I got to meet him at San Diego Comic-Con maybe like 15 years ago before he died. I got to meet him, and he looked like Dracula. Like he wears black suits, he has jet black hair. Yeah, he was really, really cool.
This guy I know.
Oh, okay, yeah. So this is Hilarious House of Frightenstein, and if you grew up in Ontario or you live in New York, you know about this show. It did really well in New York, and it is basically a comedy kids version of all the Universal horror monsters.
This was probably
my
introduction to Universal horror monsters.
Yes.
Like seeing Billy Van dress up as like Dracula and like the Wolfman and.
This is Rue Morgue magazine. This is a magazine, horror magazine that came out in Toronto. I think around probably 2004, 2005, somewhere in there. We used to go to their Halloween parties. I remember I used to go to that Halloween party every year, the Rue Morgue Halloween party in Toronto. It was this big Halloween party, and the one year a guy showed up with a crocodile. It was a pet crocodile, and it was like this big, right? And over the years, going to the party, that crocodile kept getting bigger and bigger. And then one year he showed up. A
crocodile?
Oh yeah, he kept bringing his pet crocodile. And then at 1 year, I went up to him and I was like, he didn't have it. And I was like, dude, where's your crocodile? And he's like, that crocodile is living in our second bedroom, and it is full size now, and we have a problem. Like it is like what you think. It's a full size crocodile living in our house, and we are at the point where, I gotta feed it like meat, like to the point of like giving it a cat every day or like something. Like it's gigantic. So anyway, I think he had to end up getting rid of his crocodile. But Rue Morgue magazine was a magazine that popped up in Toronto. Yeah, and this is what it was. That was the Wolfman. Yep. And he was a DJ.
And it had Vincent Price.
He would dance. It had Vincent Price as their kind of like crypt keeper, and he would always tell like these poems and stuff. And there's a great story about Vincent Price. He did all the shooting for the entire show in 48 hours. All the scenes and all seasons and all episodes were shot in 48 hours with Vincent Price. And when he went, this was all shot in Hamilton, Ontario, the whole thing. And when it was shot, the rapport on set that day was so bad that like at one point Vincent Price disappeared. They're all freaking out. He shows up an hour later, and he had taken a cab to the beer store and apparently bought like 15 cases of beer and just divvied it out amongst the staff, and
just
was like,
to chill everyone
out. To chill everyone out and get everyone back on board, and like get everyone having a good time and everything. And like it was a really cool story. What a class act. I tried to buy the comic book rights for this at one point, but it all kind of like blew up in my face.
Oh, but they must exist.
Yeah, they exist, but it got weird because it got all split. Okay, there's Elvira, my first crush.
So wait. Did you get into, I guess it was before your time, like all the EC horror stuff?
Yes. So EC horror comics were definitely a part of what I would buy when I was a kid. Now, these are the ones from when I was actually a kid. And these would have been, these are Tales from the Crypt. No, I don't think they're reprints. They come from Dragon Lady in Toronto. Yeah. So where I used to live in Toronto, on College Street, just on a street called Grace, just off of College. I was living there when you and I first met.
So wait, this is 1991, and it's
That's right.
They're calling it vintage EC horror.
Yeah, so these must be reprints of some nature if they're coming out in 91. But they were sold at Dragon Lady. And you had Tales from the Crypt. You had Haunt of Fear.
Jack Davis.
Yeah, so Jack Davis is going to be in there. Another big guy was like Mike Plug. Now, Jack Davis is who when I started making comics, when you met me, I was trying to model. Almost my whole career was me trying to model myself
Is that Mike Plug?
That's Plug.
Yeah, because you can see like that. It looks like a Sam Keith.
Yeah, they're kind of goofy. They're kind of elongated. They're really great. So Tales from the Crypt are basically, if you know about Haunt of Fear or Tales from the Crypt comics, they all tend to be short stories. Just like you would see in the movies. They all originated in the comics, and they were EC horror. And of course, Wortham and all the stuff in the 50s about comics being bad for kids and them introducing the comic code and everything like that happened because of these comics. Now, that's part of the allure of these comics.
That they're forbidden.
They're forbidden. Yeah. And that, of course, as a kid, That's what I really loved. Anything that was considered
But you wouldn't
forbidden,
have known they were forbidden at the
They
time.
were, of course. Did you know that they would have book burnings of these? In like parts of the southern United States,
Yeah.
they would get together and like have gigantic comic book burnings of EC horror comics.
But were your
And romance comics
did your
and all
parents
kinds of stuff.
forbid them?
No,
Your
my
parents didn't care what you
my
were
parents
reading?
let me run around like cutting out pictures from Fangoria and posting on my wall. My biggest, we talked about Elvira for a sec. My biggest like thing when I was a kid is I had a crush on Elvira from when I was a kid.
That's not
And
Elvira.
I
is it?
had it is. And I had this giant door poster. It was like 6 feet by 4 feet of Elvira. If you look it up, we'll find something to show in the show. But it's like her against her hearse Cadillac, and it was like the size of my whole wall. It was that and Samantha Fox posters, like as far as the eye could see in my bedroom, and then cut out little pictures of like horror bits from Fangoria magazine everywhere. So it would have been like Wolfman's and like all that stuff. That was my bedroom. And then these were the comics I collected, like Tales from the Crypt and Creature Commandos and all that stuff. And most of my career has been in horror. If you look at this book here, now I left the single issue at home. I think I have a bunch of the single issue of Creepy. This is Creepy, like a collection, but Creepy #1 is particularly quite famous just based on the artists in it. It had a complete short story by Frank Frazetta. It had a short story by Al Williamson. It had like...
That's all collected here?
Yeah, all collected in Creepy #1.
Which you have that? You have a copy of it?
Yeah, I have like 5 copies of it. They're at home with my Fangorias. Yeah. So I believe there's like, is there Wally Wood in it?
Artists.
So
You've
here you
got
go, artists.
Lee Crandall, Jack Davis, George Evans, Frank Frazetta, Gray Morrow, Joe Orlando, Angela Torres, Al Williamson, Maurice Whitman.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It's just like a bananas collection of like some of the best artists. We have to show the Frazetta book in here. Like, which one's the Frazetta one? It's like he fights like it's like a dude fighting a, I guess it's back here. Al Williamson this is Al Williamson, this one. It's really, really cool. Like, God, look at those panels. Just unreal work. Like, Al Williamson was such a beast. It's just, oh, look at this one. Look at that. So good. But let me find I think this is the Frazetta one. No. The Frazetta one, he's fighting like this is it.
Okay.
This is a Frank Frazetta comic, which is pretty rare. You don't often see Frazetta comics. Pretty crazy, eh? Notice like the difference in grays to blacks.
Yeah, I was looking at that.
So
like,
it's gotta be like,
it's all
it's all
brush.
paint, all brush and paint, like different gray tones.
Like, how would they have photographed this?
Well, yeah, it's just a photograph, and then they immediately went to print. It was like not something I think that would probably be
all this wash.
normal. Yeah. Yeah, it's just really, really crazy. It's really cool. Creepy #1.
I go back again?
Yeah. So Dragon Lady in Toronto.
I remember this.
So Dragon Lady in Toronto used to specialize in like having all the EC horror comics, and they had a lot of creepy and eerie and all that stuff from like the 50s and the 60s, and then this stuff all got banned. And I remember, I'm not going to name names, but I was at a talk at SVA with very big like modern contemporary like comic people doing horror for like DC and other stuff. And I remember like watching it, and I was like a big fan of this stuff, like huge monster comic and horror comic fan. And I was in the audience, and Becky was on the talk. And I remember at one point I was like, hey, how many of you guys are like big EC horror fans? No one. They didn't even know what I was talking about. They were like, what's EC horror? And that totally like freaked me out. You're drawing horror comics, but you didn't bother to like check out the history of horror comics in comics. Like, the level of people that I think don't do a lot of like history digging into like what they're really working on, I mean, people will come at something creatively any way they kind of want, whatever. But for me, I like to know the history of like what I'm working on, and there's such a rich history of horror comics. And considering the comics that I'm talking about were outright banned by the government and burned, is like something that's so punk rock, like it's so badass.
There's a lot to be learned from these, especially if you're like if you're trying to illustrate horror in in how like they cast shadows, like creepy environments, just lighting. And I think like when that stuff found its way into like Swamp Thing.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. So here we go. This guy is probably like my major hero in comics, at least my really big influence in my 20s. I really wanted to be like Jack Davis. And Jack Davis, what's funny is he's super religious and apparently doesn't talk about his horror stuff anymore at all. He did a lot of sports stuff after, a lot of like, you know, comics like that. And I think maybe he got really like, maybe even embarrassed by what happened with like the comic code stuff. But like the work is like just incredible. And this is what got me into comics. Like this is what, when I was started to work professionally, and I'm gonna show some of my first work after this from Wildstorm, but like this was the stuff I was really into when I first got into comics. I wanted to model my whole career after like this guy pretty much. And I remember some of the guys from Raid took me out for dinner and they were just like, if you want to keep drawing like this instead of like getting a DC like more house style like Jim Lee or something, you're never gonna work. And I was like, okay, all right. But for me,
like this looks like you could have drawn it.
Yeah, a lot of like if you look at it, like I literally like I really did model a lot of my art and my career off of like Jack Davis. A part of me wishes I had like even stuck with it, you know, like. I mean, you can still see parts of it in my work now.
Yeah, look at this.
Yeah, but a lot of the drawings like are very Jack Davis, and like I still have it in me in my work. His use of blacks is always like really great.
Yeah, like the thickness of the lines.
Oh yeah, they're always like big thick lines, and like, you know, I used to get blasted for that. Like, oh, your inking's so thick and big. But like, I just love this stuff. But like, this era is really funny of comics, just in the amount of writing that's on every page. Like it just dominates to the point of like, they used to do like what I consider like something disgusting, which is this. Like, I hate this. Whenever you come in on a panel and like cut out the thing just to like fit a piece of dialogue, just always like freaks me out. But like, these were all of a time when you just wrote, there's narration in every box almost.
Yeah, it's like someone's telling a prose story.
Yeah,
and you're just illustrating it.
Yeah, you're just illustrating like a prose story.
Holy crow! Look at this.
Yeah, just like tons and tons of. Look at all this. Just like drawn somewhere else. And
I love seeing the paste up.
Pasted in. It's so great. Look at all this business. It's so cool. Man, yeah, like this. Look at that. All the paste ups. So look, this whole thing was pasted in here.
I want to see now, like, so we're looking at Jack Davis, who's one of your main influences.
Yeah.
Let's see your first comic now.
This is like one of my most favorite things in the world.
Here we go.
Here, I'll throw it back over here. So if we're going to get into that, this is the very first comic I ever had published.
Okay.
Friday the 13th. Now,
Cover
do you remember
by
the story
else.
of this?
I remember the story of how you got the job.
The story of how I got the job was you and I went to San Diego Comic-Con because you were working with Ben Abernathy at Wildstorm on a zombie book, right?
Yes, we were getting ready to do that. And it was actually my first visit to Wildstorm Studios, which was a huge deal for me because I'm such a nerd for like the whole like Jim Lee studio, like Wildstorm. And also I have like personal, I have history with that because I was like this close, I think, to getting to go there and work there. Twice, actually, but we can talk about that another time.
It was, imagine you had. It was glorious. That was also the trip that we all went on, the trip to DreamWorks.
Yeah.
To get like kind of interviewed at DreamWorks to work on Megamind.
So we went there, we hung out with Ben.
We hung out with Ben, and I remember we were walking around and a bunch of the other guys that were with us at Raid were kind of asking for work on the trip. And like, I hadn't been published by any major publisher at that point. I was in Raid, but working on side projects, coloring for Moonstone. I was in production of working on some comics. Nothing had been published yet. And we got to Ben's office, and it was like floor to ceiling horror. It was like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacres, because they had the New Line license. And Ben was super into horror movies. And I remember just like talking, the two of us just started talking about horror comics. And like during that trip right there in the room, he was like, hey, do you want to try out for like 2 issues of Friday the 13th? And I was like, yeah!
Yep.
Woo!
Yep.
I had to go home and I did a bunch of tests. And they loved the tests. And I got to do this issue with Josh Fialkov.
I remember
and
the
this
tests.
is the last. Unfortunately, this is the last issue of Friday the 13th because then they lost the New Line license. But I had found out from Ben.
They did one issue?
Yeah, after this, it all died.
Oh, wow.
So I found out from Ben that they had talked about me wanting to like continue because my style was so radically different than everyone else that was drawing for that book. And I caught all kinds of flack on this book because everyone thought that I drew very cartoony. But I was just trying to draw like Jack Davis and EC Horror, right? I was trying to do a complete retro thing. This was also one of the first books that started doing retro stuff with like dot patterns and all the rest of it.
Oh, yeah.
So this is it. This is my very first published comic ever. And it was with Wildstorm, who at that time had become DC. And it is a story about a teenage girl getting abused by her parents. And she ends up having an abusive boyfriend who's punching her in the face. And she decides that she wants to waste this guy. So it's kind of like, it shows a bit of her backstory in high school about her getting teased and kind of like freaking out. And then her parents are drunks and she's just having a bad time. She ends up going out with her boyfriend and seducing him. And then she's about to murder him, or she does, she stabs him. And he's dying. And then who shows up? Jason shows up.
So you know what's interesting to me? I remember when you did these pages, there's stuff about like the way you inked these textures and fabric and stuff that is very close to the way that Cameron was inking at the time.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I know we were sharing a studio, but if you just covered up some of these faces and stuff, like some of the stuff could be.
Yeah, it was close.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a mentor at that time. I mean, there's a part coming up, and this is cool. She like kills Jason, and then Jason comes back, and there's just this great scene where he's lifting the whole back of her Firebird, and then like chucks it over.
So who decided to do this halftone stuff?
I had talked to Ben about doing the. I was like, I want this to feel like EC Horror. I want it to look super retro. And it was actually Darlene Royer.
Okay.
When she heard that, she was like, I want to do something like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great panel.
Yeah. And then Cameron actually was like, I basically showed this scene to Cameron, and he was like, silhouette that out, have more dark in the fire, to really like pop the contrast. Like, definitely he helped me with that. I remember him talking to me about that panel. But this is, I think, one of my favorite pages. I can't remember if I sold this page. I think I sold that page. But like, this was one of my favorite pages in my portfolio for years and years and years because I really had fun drawing it. I love the storytelling in it, that she comes out of the car, gives him like a dirty look. Jason looks at her as she's lighting up the gas that's on the ground, and then it explodes. And then at the end, she thinks she has a rapport with Jason, and oh no!
Please.
Jason beheads her and walks off. And that's the end of her.
That's a cool first issue.
Lost Boys.
Oh, yeah. We don't have that.
Nope. Lost Boys comic. So that was my first published comic ever.
Yeah.
Was
a horror comic in the
by
vein of
Friday
Jack
the
Davis.
13th.
The only like monster comics I own really are some like Jack Kirby Devil Dinosaurs, which I consider a monster comic.
Yeah, they're monster comics.
It features a monster in Devil Dinosaur.
We were talking the other day whether Devil Dinosaur talks or not.
I don't think he does.
Maybe someone could tell us in the comments whether
I'm pretty sure Devil Dinosaur
talks.
does not talk. He just roars.
And is he fighting?
That's Moonboy, his buddy.
Oh, Moonboy.
Yeah.
Okay, he's kind of like, is he meant to be like a primate with a furry body?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So
yeah, this guy looks amazing.
This
actually.
is one of the, like Devil Dinosaur, I think was the last series Jack Kirby worked on at Marvel.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Like, look at these guys. They're awesome.
Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah.
And the other one, which I have, is this creature from the Black Lagoon book. And I bought this not because I cared about the creature from the Black Lagoon, though I do like the creature, but the fact that this is all Art Adams and Terry
Art
Austin.
Adams obviously has a big hard-on for Creature
Art
from the
Adams
Black
loves
Lagoon.
drawing monsters, and
he
I
loves
love Art
monsters.
Adams. Look
Yeah.
at it. Like, I mean, like,
That's awesome.
You
Yeah,
can't-
he's having the time of his life.
yeah, there's some amazing stuff in here. So this
You know
is
what
one
this
of
book
my
reminds me
favorite
of? This
books.
reminds me of the guy who did Rocketeer.
Dave Stevens?
Yeah, it kind of has a Dave Stevens-y feel.
I think it's the way the
Maybe
women
it's
are
the layouts.
portrayed and
yeah,
dressed.
maybe it's the women. Yeah, that's like a weird. Yeah, I'm getting like Dave Stevens vibes. Look at all those panels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 panels.
But that's it for me in Monster Comics, pretty much.
Yep.
That's a good one.
That's
to have.
awesome.
Yeah.
Super cool. So if we're going to talk about like Marvel at all, you know, Marvel has, and I have a collection of them, but I can't seem to find them. They were here the other day, and now I can't find them. But I have Werewolf by Night was the other comic that I freaked out for. Here's a Werewolf by Night Essentials. Now they just had Marvel Entertainment just put out the Werewolf by Night like short on Halloween. It was great.
Yeah.
I really liked it. It was a comic book that I collected when I was a kid. I don't have any of the ones from when I was a kid anymore, but these were also like great comics, and it was basically taking a werewolf and turning him into a superhero in the city. And he would, you know, wolf out and then take on, you know, wizards and cults and supernatural
foes,
stuff.
yeah.
And he would often fight Dracula. So
I have not read much of Werewolf by Night, but I have read a bunch of Tomb of Dracula.
yeah, so there's
Because Tomb of Dracula is all, this is all Gene Colan, right?
yeah.
This
it's
is
all
like
Gene Colan.
amazing Gene Colan artwork.
Yeah, I have a bunch of these, and this artwork just blows my mind
Yeah,
too. When you're looking at EC Horror and Jack Davis, and then you open a Tomb of Dracula.
Like you can see like how like very photo reference this is, but it's like
Brilliant
so
black and
great.
whites. It has the flavor of Toth in a lot of scenarios. Like, you know, it's a lot more like brushy and fluid, but I still feel like I'm looking at a Toth a little bit when I look at some of this Gene Colan stuff.
The
And
depiction of
these
where
books
do
are
you think
great.
like the depiction of Dracula?
Yeah, he's always got a mustache.
I think he was based on Jack Palance.
Yes, I think so, because he looks like Jack Palance.
Yeah.
That's not a Christopher Lee Dracula.
No.
However, there was a Christopher Lee Dracula movie where he had a mustache. I forget which one it is.
But
I don't know if
anyway,
it's Dracula's Daughters.
I
or-
read a lot of Tomb of Dracula. I liked it a lot.
Oh, it's a great comic. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Sitting around and just reading these giant essentials of monster comics. Now this, you'll know because this is the Monster of Frankenstein, which is kind of a funny title. But why I love the Monster of Frankenstein, because at one point, this becomes John Buscema.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and John Buscema's Frankenstein is like the bomb. I might have already passed it. Yeah, I think I passed it.
Have we done
I
it?
think
We
it was
haven't
near
talked
the
about
beginning.
Buscema yet in a show, right?
Buscema?
We haven't done a Buscema.
No, we
episode.
talked about him loosely,
Yeah.
like...
We will.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Buscema because the animal over here is obsessed with John Buscema right now. Buscema's in here somewhere. I don't know, I can't find it. But he's in here. But he did a lot of Frankenstein comics that are just the most amazing thing of all time. Now, getting into Frankenstein, this is one of the most coveted things in comics.
Oh yeah, you cannot talk
This-
about horror comics
No, you
without
can't.
talking about Bernie Wrightson's
So
Frankenstein.
Bernie Wrightson, who is also probably one of the greatest horror artists that came out of comics, he's definitely in. He didn't do EC Horror comics, I don't think, but he was definitely like, when you think about horror, he's like the guy. And this book is some of the greatest drawing that a comic artist has ever done. Now, it's not a comic book. They're illustrated depictions of the novel. So this is the novel, but the drawings in this book are quite famous. They look like old
They look like etchings.
etchings.
Yeah.
Like there's Franklin Booth in here. It's pretty incredible. His work in here. This is a giant forward. And then you get into the drawings. It looks like old money. It's absolutely fantastic. Just Brilliant, beautiful work.
Everyone has seen that. Like, I think it's like a double spread image of like the laboratory.
Oh yeah, so where is that laboratory shot? Like that laboratory, this is one of the greatest shots in the whole book. It's so beautiful. Like look at that, it's gorgeous. Just him in a box on a ship.
There's almost no white in any of these drawings, right?
Yeah,
Except for just right there.
And look at that hand, how it's just built up from grays. There's no lines, right? Like it's like him building up the tones. But we gotta find, oh, if Frankenstein's monster is already here, then we've passed the shot with the laboratory, which is probably one of the most insane looking things that ever happened in comics. There's the monster, so he's
black.
already made the monster. Let's get there. Oh, one of the, look at that. It's almost like a zombie, right? Like it's like very, very zombie looking. Okay.
Oh,
anyway,
we can pop it over.
We'll
overlay.
We'll overlay it somehow, but like that shot is like legendary. Look at that. Just beautiful drawing after beautiful drawing in this book.
Great gesture.
It's so beautiful. Near the end of his life, he died of brain cancer, but near the end of his life, I had met him through Darwin Cook and Jimmy Palmiotti, and he was part of like our crew kind of. And I remember I would go to some smaller comic conventions over the years when those guys wouldn't be there, but Bernie would be there, and I would go out for dinner with Bernie and his wife, and he was friends with Steve Niles too, who I was buddies with. So I used to like go out with him for dinner sometimes and just pick his brain over this book. And I remember him telling me like, "Oh, I almost went blind drawing that book."
How many illustrations is it?
I think it's got to be 100 at least. I think there's about 100. There's one of them. One of the most beautiful shots, like just unbelievable. Yeah, I think he had problems with his wrists after.
There it is. That's the one.
Boom! Look at that. Just unbelievable work. Like the amount of time this probably took was just shocking.
Well, just staging it.
Yeah.
Alone would be a nightmare.
Coming up
and then like inking all like the light coming through this beaker, like
unbelievable.
Like,
unbelievable.
There's so many layers.
This is like one of the most coveted things in comics, this book. It has some of the greatest drawing that's ever been done by a comic book artist. Just absolutely gorgeous. And if you look at the studio that he was in, talk about a studio of heavy hitters, like otherworldly artists. Completely crazy. I told you. Then you get into like a lot of superhero comics. You know what I mean? Like Marvel's House of Horror. Marvel also had House of Mystery that is also like full of good stuff. That's like Tales of the Crypt.
House of Mystery is just a Tales of the Crypt knockoff.
It's just a Tales of the Crypt knockoff. Yeah. This one here, Marvel's Marvel Horror. It tends to be a little more superhero based. It has who's like the Satan kid? He's basically like the devil.
Oh yeah.
He's on the cover here. This guy, I forget his name. Right now it's escaping me, but he's in a lot of these.
Clarion, the Witch Boy, that kid? No, well, that's a DC character.
He's in one of the Marvel movies recently. He's in the Christmas special of Guardians of the Galaxy, I think. Or maybe he was just in the new Guardians of the Galaxy. But yeah, they threw him in there and it was like really crazy. So that's some of that stuff that's really cool. And then, most of my career has been horror. So I did a bunch of stuff with Scott Snyder on Swamp Thing. This was the climax issue of the DC 52. And you and I also worked on the, what was it, the annual.
Yeah,
I penciled a bunch of the annual, and you inked me on the annual.
On some of these.
But this was this famous or infamous issue in my world. I was given this issue because Marco Rudy quit working on the book to go work at Marvel because he was offered Spider-Man, and he ended up doing Winter Soldier. But he ended up quitting, leaving them in the lurch on the climax issue of the book, and they wanted me to come in and basically draw this book in a little under 3 weeks during Christmas when they were all on holidays.
I remember it.
And I remember like really getting excited because I was going to be doing something big in DC finally. I was getting to work with Scott Snyder, who was like super hot at the time. And I got the gig because of Yannick Paquette, who was my buddy. You know, we'll have him on the show sometime. He's a Montreal local. And we did great work on the annual, and I was excited about this, but trying to do the climax issue of DC 52 following Yannick Paquette in 3 weeks didn't go so hot. And that was the last time I worked at DC. This was the last thing I ever did with DC. I thought for 2.5 weeks over Christmas, I did the best I could. Some of it was really fun. Like I really loved Animal Man. I remember Becky and I pitched an Animal Man series after this. With Man Bat Girl.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Did you know about Man Bat Girl?
I remember you had to draw her in this series. Right?
Yeah, so Batgirl became Man Bat, so she was Man Bat Girl, and we thought it'd be really like hilarious to do a comic about Animal Man in the leather jacket that I had with Man Bat Girl just hanging around punk clubs in New York. And then they have this like love affair. Most of the pages in this book have sold. I've sold them over the years.
This does not look like it was drawn in 3 weeks.
Oh, it was 3 weeks. It was colored in 3 days, but like, so there was like a lot of stuff left uncolored. But like, I remember like this scene in particular. You're in here. Let's see if we can spot Karl, because it's me.
Oh yeah,
it's me, Becky, and Karl in the ghosts. I can't remember. Like that's Becky. Is that you? That's you.
That is?
That's you for sure. Remember, because I got the lighting out to like light it? Yeah. That's me right there. I think that's you. That's your face. That's definitely you. Yeah. That might be you too right there, or Becky. But it was basically the three of us, and I got the lighting gear up so I could get this extreme lighting to draw these like super creepy ghosts. I think all three of us were in this one. I think I'm like cropped out right here. And then it was just like, and then it went into the new thing. And I remember saying to Yannick, I was like, Yannick, this is your climax issue of your whole series with Scott Snyder. It has the full war. Like that was the other thing. They're like, by the way, it's the war issue, so there's going to be 5,000 characters in it. I'm just like, I have 3 weeks to draw this thing, right? And Yannick was like, I was like, Yannick, why don't you want to do it? And he was like, the issue after this is very romantic, and I want to do the romantic issue. And then, is that a good Yannick? Like I'm doing.
Yeah, it's like that's
it's more like this. I want to do the romantic issue after this, and it's all that war stuff. I don't need that. It's too much. So I ended up doing this issue. This is a good learning thing in comics because it's not the first time I've done this, but like you'll get offered stuff in comics and you come in to save the day on a rush job, and because you have to rush it, you can't produce your normal work, and then they never hire you again. Despite saving their butts.
Lesson learned.
You're out. I did learn my lesson. It happened again at Heavy Metal Magazine with Grant Morrison, where I did a comic, 20-page comic in 2 weeks for them. And then that was the last time. I learned my lesson after that one. I was like, I'm never doing that again. If I can't get 4 to 6 weeks to do an issue, I don't take it. It's not going to happen. So, I mean, that's some of the other stuff. I was part of this like Dracula thing, but it's basically a book of just Dracula art. But I got the cover on this one. It was really exciting. Now, the other thing I want to talk about with Monster Comics is one of my favorite things in the world, and I'm going to call it Monster Comics. But this run of Predator, it's the first comics from Dark Horse. It's their first like foray into Predator comics, and it's the best. When I was a kid, I think I drew this shot of the Predator maybe like 100 times. This whatever this image on this cover, this like, you know, gesture of the Predator captivated me so much when I was a kid. I just redrew it and redrew it and redrew it and redrew it and redrew it hundreds of times, it felt like. This comic's really cool. The plot of this comic is pretty much Predator 2. It's like
before Predator 2 happened?
And the star of the comic is Arnold Schwarzenegger's brother. And he's playing a cop in the inner city, and he fights like gangs, and the gangs basically then get hunted by the Predators. And like that's Arnold Schwarzenegger's brother, and he's basically blonde and as big as Arnold. and I just like lost my marbles over this comic. I haven't heard too much about this artist.
Ron Randall.
No, it's Chris Warner.
Oh,
I have not heard too
That
much
issue
else
was
from
not-
Chris Warner besides these Predator comics that I like. Look at this. So this is the comic that was one of my most favorite. It is easily, I would say, from a nostalgia point of view, this is like top 10, one of my favorite comics ever made. Just based on like how much I looked at it and read it and like slaved over it as a kid. I redrew this shot like at least 50 times.
1990.
Yeah, it would have been 1990, and I was just like the gestures of Arnold Schwarzenegger's brother are amazing. Like how this guy didn't go on just to do like a million issues of Punisher, I don't get.
Yeah.
Like maybe he did, but like this guy is like the perfect artist for Punisher. Like
It almost, in places, looks like Mark Texeira.
yeah, totally.
Not the faces so much, but some of the gestures.
And there's just this, like great shots of him fighting like the Predator and stuff. It is so good. Just phenomenal stuff. This is really great. So,
Monster Comics.
Monster Comics. Yeah, this is what got me into comics. Here's one last thing that I was a part of last year, which is James Tynion's Razor Blades. And if you open it up, I do the first story with James Tynion. This is my work too. That's kind of Jack Davis-y, all goopy. And if you open it up, this is the first story, is a story I did with James Tynion. And it was, this one was a lot of fun. I'm really proud of this story. It was really great. And it's basically about a guy having a blackout, and when he wakes up, he's realized he's put his landlady in the washing machine 100 times.
A great page. Did you do all the gray tones yourself?
Yep. Yeah, I did everything. Yeah. Yeah, and then he takes the handyman, who is Harry Dean Stanton, and he throws him in the washing machine and washes him 1,000 times. So, there we go. Anyway,
Dreams fulfilled.
dreams fulfilled. This was what got me into comics. So on that note, happy Halloween.
Yeah, happy Halloween.
And
we're
buy
gonna
some-
have a studio party here.
Yeah, we're gonna have a party.
So we're gonna
Yeah,
decorate
big-
everything. We'll put all these horror
big
comics
studio Halloween
in the
party
studio
coming
for
up.
people to look at.
Yep. And get out there and read some monster comics. I mean, there's so many monster comics that we didn't even touch on. You know, like guys like Eric Powell are really into monsters, and I mean, so's Magnola, but we kind of
Well, yes, we talked about.
we decided
We thought, should we talk about Hellboy as like the quintessential modern monster comic? But that's its own episode.
its own episode. Yeah, we have to do a Magnola Hellboy episode all by itself, but also something that I was obsessed with when it came to comics in general.
I
was
wish we
Hellboy.
had some of the old Marvel Godzilla comics.
Oh yeah,
but
that'd be great.
We didn't have
That'd
any
be really
here.
good. So earlier we were talking about Stephen Kostansky and Sam Raimi, and not Sam Raimi, sorry, Rick Baker and some of those guys who do monster, prosthetics and masks and all the rest of that. And Kostansky was a guy that did that stuff. And when I finally got to see Psycho Gorman, it's part of the reason why we got into that, because that's the kind of guy he is, and that he has that creature shop.
This basically ticks all your boxes. Right?
This
like
ticked
creature
all the boxes.
makeup, horror,
Boxes.
weird kind of like almost sci-fi.
Yeah,
kinda
yeah,
stuff,
all the
yeah.
sci-fi stuff. So the basic premise of Psycho Gorman, if you haven't seen the film, is that Psycho Gorman is basically like Thanos, I guess, a horror version of Thanos. And a little girl and her brother are digging in the backyard, and they find a crystal, and the crystal is what's keeping him imprisoned under the backyard. And when they pull out the crystal, he basically comes back to life. But the little girl, because she holds the crystal, has all power over him. So he has to do whatever she says, no matter what. And it's basically like this weird like comedy with like kids mixed with like an evil monster Thanos. And you're in here, I'm in here. There's Dres13, who does all our logo design at Lethal, and Aurelio. We got John Golden. Like, we got some like really awesome guys in here. God, this was so good. My buddy Eric. So there you are. Look at this. You did the
Oh yeah, this is the gross cat.
the gross
ball.
cat one. Yeah, that was so good. And then I there is an amazing. We're gonna have him on. This is Alexis Zirrit. If you guys don't know Alexis Zirrit, this is Erwin Papa, who's like really cool. But then here we go. Here's our boy, our DM in our Dungeons and Dragons group is Ben Mara, and Ben Mara came in and did like a comic for us, and we have to have him on the show sometime.
Yes,
Ben
for
Mara's
sure.
like,
for sure.
he's brilliant.
He's amazing, and he's a great comic historian and conversationalist.
Absolutely, and I am absolutely bonkers in love with his comics. They're phenomenal. Al Gofa's in here. Eluse. This thing's hilarious. I just realized it looks like a penis spitting blood all over his face, or is it going this way? I don't know.
It's definitely going up.
It's definitely going up. And then this is the one I did here. Very like, heavy metal magazine, monster comics. This is weird murder pyramid. That stuff was super crazy. Yeah, so that was Psycho Gorman. And that was quite the enterprise there. All right.
That's it.
That's it.